We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you.
Hello and welcome to another IBD Determined podcast episode. Today, I'm your host, Mason Harvey, and I speak from the role of a patient with Crohn's disease.
And I'm your other host, Michelle Harvey. I'm Mason's mom, and I speak in the role of a caregiver. Do you want to tell them what today's exciting episode is going to be about?
Today's exciting topic is from IBD Day, the hospital. We're still going on with that. There's only one more left, right?
There is.
There's only one more left after this. Today is, we're going to be talking about surgery.
Yeah.
So, fun.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a word that a lot of people out there kind of go, ugh. But it's important to talk about and maybe not have the fears of it, but have a better understanding of surgery and this disease, the realities of it and what they do. So before we talk about it, we want to update you guys because last week we talked about how we thought Mason might be in a flare. And turns out
it's a little flare.
It is.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah. I know. But we ended up this week being one of his treatment days, that a typical one. So every 4 weeks he gets his Stelara, and that was on time. So we might have mentioned it before that Mason was going to be transitioning from 4 weeks to 6 weeks. And they had ran his trough levels, and it showed he had more than enough Entyvio in his system. And yeah, which was great. And all things, lab wise looked positive. And so didn't make it to 6 weeks, but I think you were weakened or something at that point because you started flaring on the next one before we even got to 4 weeks. And so his doctor decided that 6 weeks.
Put it back to 4 weeks.
Yeah, 6 weeks is too much. So 4 weeks, it's going back. So the interesting thing is with this disease, sometimes for some people, those lab results having those high trough levels would have been more than enough. But for someone like Mason, it's not.
Yeah.
And so you
just defy all the odds.
Yeah. So you just, with this, like we say, everyone is so different and they try their hardest to have standards that, they can measure and it's, kind of makes sense. Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't. So for Mason, didn't work out. We really appreciated her trying.
Yes.
We liked having the extra time off.
It was nice. And then we're like,
it was
we
really
don't have
cool.
that anymore.
Yeah. But at the same time, the important thing is that you're feeling better.
Yes.
And so I think just sharing this with you guys, because a lot of you out there might be facing something disappointing or what you feel is a setback with your disease. And sometimes that is just part of it. And so I think
you're not alone.
Right. You're not alone. Yeah. And sometimes you have these setbacks and that's just part of it because you're going to step forward again and you will get better. Things will change. And so you just got to keep going with it and, stay as positive as you can. But it's also okay to be frustrated and be disappointed and all those things. So being positive doesn't mean that you're like always happy and like always. It's just, I guess just like you choose to look at the silver linings in it, which is that
you're not alone.
Yeah. And that you have something that works for you.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. It's not like you were, you were taking something and the biologic started failing. We this time know.
Yeah. At least this time we knew, oh, well, this is the reason. It's because we're not on 4 weeks anymore. We're trying to expand it. And it's not like we were on 4 weeks and we're like,
yeah.
Oh, no.
So that's another challenge. So in this one, I'm glad they tried. It makes sense why. And
you don't know if you're not going to try.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. And Mason is still doing the same. So we're hopefully next week when we talk to you guys,
it'll be all cleared up.
Yeah, that would be really nice. So that is the goal. And so with that, we're going to talk, like we said, we're going to talk about surgery today. And if any of you are listening, we try to make this, we encourage other, families to listen, adults, but you want to make a call if you want your children listening to some of this. It might be new information to them. They may not, you may not have talked to them yet about surgeries or the potential, but we'll do our best to just share how they shared at IBD Rady Day, which was in front of kids. They talked all about this. So, yeah. So
The surgeon was good.
yeah,
Really
he
nice.
is. He always is. He's excellent. And I'm thankful we have him at our hospital,
Yeah.
really. So just keeping that in mind, we're going to leave the more graphic descriptions of some of these surgeries, which again will not be terrible. We don't want to talk like that either. So
Who wants to talk about that? I mean,
yeah,
it's a surgeon.
but we want to just recap what he went over.
Mhm.
And, maybe you guys will learn a little something and maybe you won't be quite as nervous and maybe it'll open up some conversations. So let's jump into it. And the very first thing he started off by saying was,
I like this. I liked what he said.
Mhm.
Was some people think of surgery as like a failing of the treatments, like they failed the treatments and there's nothing else that's going to work. And he
Right,
said, surgery is not a failure of treatments.
right,
And I like that he said that.
right. Because sometimes it's used in tandem
Yeah, it can be
and
used both.
and
They both
never
can
to
be
feel
used.
like it's a failure if you're heading to surgery.
No.
That's not the way to view it. So, yeah, I really appreciated how he presented that. And for certain people with ulcerative colitis, he said that surgery can also be a
A
cure.
cure. Yeah.
So it depends how you want to treat your ulcerative colitis. And there are biologics out there that, are really helpful nowadays. But sometimes you might just want to be done with that and say, let's just get rid of this.
Yeah, let's just go get a surgery and be done with it.
And so it can be a cure for ulcerative colitis, but that's a conversation to have with your doctor to see if that is an option.
Mhm.
But overall, surgery is performed to improve your quality of life.
Yes.
And that's always something that is considered with this disease. Even when they treat it with anything, it's how is this going to affect your quality of life? So then he went over some of the main reasons for something like emergency surgery. So some of these surgeries will be well planned out. You'll have had discussions with your surgeon.
In 3 months, we'll be doing surgery.
Right, something like that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you end up with a problem that wasn't
And it just
planned.
popped up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so those ones, he said the usual cases for something like an emergency surgery would be, do you want to go over
Oh
those?
yes, I'll talk about these wonderful things.
Yeah.
So the first one is infection.
Hmm.
Second one is bleeding. This next one is perforation. I don't know what that means. The next one is
Perforation is like a hole, like
Oh, okay.
something perforated an intestine.
And then yeah, you don't want that.
Mhm.
That's not good. And the next one's an obstruction. So kind of like
Something that could be blocking
yes.
something. So an obstruction.
Persistent symptoms.
Mhm.
Side effects. Another one is growth and development, which is
Yeah.
important at younger ages.
And that's why it's very different for pediatrics because they may consider surgery for the growth and development of a child.
Remember, with an adult, you have all the time you need to get back on a biologic that or something that works for you or
Right.
surgery. But when you're a kid, you only have
There's a time frame
Yeah.
for those growth plates
for those
close
growths.
and
Yeah,
yeah, with puberty and everything, it's just really important to focus on the growth and
and get
development.
them to grow.
So sometimes an emergency surgery may happen for those reasons. And then he went over some percentages, which I thought was really cool. And I mean, not like,
Oh
ooh,
yes, it was so
yeah,
cool.
I thought these percentages were very
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah,
to
interesting.
hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not fun, but
No.
interesting.
Right. And so the percentage of patients that end up in surgery with Crohn's disease is 5% in the first year, 20% by 5 years, and 30% by 10 years. And it kind of makes sense because it's a progressive disease.
Yeah, it's
So
gonna get worse over
it's going to
time.
get worse. And then he said for ulcerative colitis, it's 10 to 20% in the first year.
Wow, that's a big percentage for the
Right.
first year.
But that might be because of people just want to have their
Yeah,
colon or
because
whatever.
Crohn's, there's not really a cure for it, and if you do have surgery where it removes where the Crohn's is located, it's just gonna go somewhere else.
Right. So it's not a cure. But for ulcerative colitis, maybe they
can
opt
be a
for that.
cure, yeah.
But he did say that number is probably decreasing for
Yeah,
ulcerative colitis with the
'cause
different
with all the
treatments,
new
with the
biologics coming
biologics.
out,
Yeah,
yeah.
some people are opting to say, hey, well, I want to keep that and let's just see if we can clear it up. And that's a great option. So that number will probably come down.
A little bit, yeah.
And then he also said that, and this was interesting to me because I hadn't heard these numbers. So with Crohn's, the presenting symptoms. So these are different symptoms we have with Crohn's disease. There's many of them, but he goes by percentage how many people are likely to have what. So the first one is the ileocolic disease is 50%.
Wow.
Abdominal pain is 44%. I would have thought that would have been higher.
Yeah.
I really, because I just figured everybody with this disease has abdominal
That is one
pain.
thing I actually haven't had with this flare, but usually when I am in a flare, I
Yeah.
do have abdominal pain usually.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess early on, the abdominal pain probably wasn't as prevalent.
Yeah.
So maybe some people, they just never get that pain when they are becoming symptomatic. That's not one of theirs. But anyways, 44%. And then
See, the fun thing is diarrhea.
yeah, I
It's
was
at
like, should you
39%.
39%. I would think that might be higher, but
Yeah.
again, these are
Yeah.
presenting symptoms. These aren't over time. These are what symptoms you're having. So 39%. Weight loss is
I
23%.
would think that would be a little higher, but
Yeah.
it's
And then rectal bleeding is 21%. And then fever,
14.
14%. And we do have a friend of yours that was her main symptom was a fever. And so that is interesting. So she was in that 14% of that being a presenting symptom was the fever for her. So that's a smaller percentage, but it does happen. Then nausea and vomiting is 13%. Fatigue is 9%. And again, I would think fatigue would be higher.
Yeah.
I really would
It's
because
definitely
of
with like
anemia.
malnutrition or
The
anemia.
malnutrition,
Yeah.
the anemia aspect. So it's interesting.
It's
And
interesting.
then perianal disease, 8%. Poor growth, 7%. And I think, I have a guess with that one because on poor growth, what are they looking at? They're not looking at adults because adults are done growing.
Yeah.
So that percentage is probably so small because it's a smaller percentage
Of
of
kids. Yeah.
kids who get it.
That
So
makes sense.
if you're grouping children with adults in this group, which it looks like they did, it makes sense that it's only 7%. But if you were just looking at kids, that's going to be a higher
We
percentage.
need a chart for the kids.
I know,
Yeah.
but that's just a guess.
Yeah,
Why?
just a guess.
Joint pain, 7%.
I would
I would have
expected
put that at the
way
top
higher.
of the list, way
Yeah,
higher.
that would have been
Yeah.
like 80% for me.
Yeah, that's what is so wild about this disease. There's presenting symptoms, but there's also the symptoms he has when he flares that we now know. And I'm looking at these when he has a flare and I'm like 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, like every single one. And so when I look at presenting symptoms, again, I guess it's the early symptoms when people are getting this, but it's amazing because joint pain was so
Yeah,
difficult for you.
I had
And
a
so,
lot, and it's so low on this list.
right. And it's so other people talk about it in regards to biologics versus inflammation. And so maybe, I don't
Yeah, like
really
with
know.
Remicade, it made my
I don't
joints
think the
hurt.
Remicade made your joints hurt. I think your inflammation was so out of control at that time, but we don't really know.
When I went on
Stellaire got rid of
I
it
got rid of the joint pain.
because your inflammation started getting under control. So
So maybe it
it's
was
like, was it
Remicade.
the
Who
biologic or
knows?
was it the inflammation?
Yeah, because
It's
we went off of Remicade and then we went on to another biologic, which helps.
it took about 2 months and then
Yeah.
it got so
Interesting.
I believe the doctor said with your case, it was inflammatory, like it was the inflammation that was causing the joint pain because you're diagnosed with peripheral arthritis. So one of your diagnoses was arthritis, and it wasn't a drug induced; it was just part of the disease. So the last one, the smallest, is mouth sores, which is 3%.
So I don't think I've had a mouth.
You've had a couple, but nothing like I would say problematic at all.
Yeah,
They ask you that question every
yeah.
time you go in, though. Do you have
Yeah.
any mouth sores? Do you have any new rashes?
If it was between joint pain and mouth sores, I'd have like joint pain at 99% and mouth sores at 1%.
Right, which it
I
is
rarely get them.
yeah. So it's just interesting numbers.
Mhm.
I just thought we'd share those with you guys because he went over them. And then the final thing he went over, this is a part where we're gonna let you guys know if you're a little queasy or you don't want to hear about it. We're not gonna describe anything like really too badly.
Yeah, you should put like that.
But
you should put on the screen when we say
I should have like a warning sign.
logo with the
Something
mark or
popping up.
something. A warning.
Yeah, just like if you have anyone that's listening that doesn't want to hear about this might be a good time to go take a break and go find us on Instagram.
Maybe they go want to watch someone else
Go
on
on
YouTube.
social media. Just head over to Instagram and check out our Team IB Determined page right now. Well, instead, go take a look and or go like and subscribe to our page. Just kind of mute this and go onto YouTube and like and subscribe.
The merch shop or something.
Yeah. So take that time. Take that time. And so whatever you want to do. So we're going to go into this and what I did because he listed all of these that I'm going to talk about, but he didn't, he went into detail, but it was really hard for me to take notes, to be honest. And I was kind of watching your dad because I thought it was funny. It was
It's so messed up.
he,
Yeah.
he doesn't like
Yeah.
this stuff.
And this is him the most of the time, just watching. And this is him when the surgeon comes up there.
Yeah,
That floor is really
he was
cool.
concentrating on the floor because it just makes him not feel too well. So he's not like scared of the surgeries, and there's no problem with that. He just hearing about how they're done, he's like he doesn't want to. So I was kind of watching him because I was worried that he was going to like fall over or something. So anyways, I was kind of trying to I got everything jotted down that he talked about, but what I did is I went to one of our favorite resources,
Crohn's and Colitis Foundation.
Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, on their website, guys. These are all on there. So I was like, hey, this is awesome. And there's also drawings. So here's the cool part, okay? Because some of you may Google this. Just a word of warning. Sometimes images pop up. Yeah, it's just you're gonna see it. And but on the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, they are kind enough to draw a picture, and it is actually it's very easy to understand, and it's not gross by any standards. I don't think, anyways. I didn't get a chance to ask Jason about that, if he thought it was gross or not, but
he probably would think it's
yeah.
I don't know.
So anyways, the Crohn's Guys Foundation is a great site where they're going to have pictures, but it's going to be drawings. It's not going to be like surgical pictures that you're seeing and you're like horrified at what you're looking at. So
if you want to learn more, go to Crohn's and Colitis Foundation.
Yes, they're really good resource for this. So we looked it up, and so we'll be able to tell you guys a little bit more about these based on what the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation said and based on what he said. So the first thing we need to let you guys know before we kind of get into the first couple surgeries is what a stricture is. It's a narrowing in the section of the intestine that occurs when inflammation from Crohn's disease causes the wall of your intestine to thicken. So if you're looking at your intestine and it's, thickening, it's getting narrower, you're going to get a blockage.
Yeah, that's not good.
No. So they can see, like when they do the MREs and they, even colonoscopy, sometimes they can't even get through because there is a stricture. So there's different ways you can treat them. And I know biologics can help these, but sometimes you will need surgery. And for that, they usually do a bowel resection. So you've heard of these, right? Do you want me to read it, or do you want to read it? Because I don't want this to be too much for you either. So if you don't feel like reading it, I'll read it.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation says it is a surgery that may be required. A
perforation,
develops in the wall of the small intestine. A bowel resection is a surgical procedure to remove a portion of your small or large intestine that has been damaged by Crohn's disease.
Yes. So that's one of the reasons for a bowel resection. You may also have a stricture, and during surgery, they're going to remove the diseased section of your intestine, and then they're going to take the two healthy ends. So they're going to cut out the bad part, take the two healthy ends, join it back together, and ta-da, you're done. Yeah.
Shorter, but
Yeah. So that is why a bowel resection might be done and how it's done in very simple terms. So the other thing that they do, so the other one is called a strictureplasty. This is kind of this would be if you had a narrowing, like a stricture. So if you had a narrowing in your intestine, this is another option instead of doing a resection. And you're probably going to ask in a minute, you're probably thinking, well, why not just do the resection? Yeah. So first of all, strictureplasty is a surgical procedure to repair stricture by widening the narrowed area without removing any portion of your intestine. So that is preferred. I'm going to read you what the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has because I like the way they explain this. So it says, it is preferred when possible, a strictureplasty, because removing portions of your small intestine cause other complications, including a condition called short bowel syndrome. This occurs when large sections of the small intestine are removed due to surgery or various surgeries. Because like we've talked about with Crohn's, right? This may not be your only surgery. So you may have a resection.
Yeah.
And
with the resection, you're constantly, if you do that multiple times, you're taking out a piece and you're shortening it.
Right. It's getting shorter and shorter.
And your intestine is long for a reason.
And right. Exactly. No, 100%. So if you've had a lot of the small intestine removed in different surgeries, your body is unable to absorb adequate amounts of nutrients and water.
Because it's not as long, so there's not as much area to...
So some people end up with short bowel syndrome. By doing a strictureplasty, they avoid removing it and they widen it so you don't lose it. But again, it depends where it's located because certain strictureplasties are not recommended for certain parts of the intestines. So your surgeon will know best. We are not surgeons, we're not
We're not
doctors.
surgeries.
Yeah, not even close, but
Weird.
this makes sense. I read this on the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. I had learned about this before. I believe a friend of ours has short bowel syndrome, and that's why it had come to my attention. I learned about it
It might sound
because
familiar.
yeah, and so I mean, before biologics, these were the options. You know, you could do they did a lot of surgeries, and so a lot of people ended up having, for future complications. But again,
Thankfully, we have so many more biologics.
so the good part is, these surgeries are available because in the end, the most important part is saving your life,
Yes.
getting you healthy again. And so sometimes these surgeries are important to have and to understand your options. And the surgeon will go over all these with you. Your doctor will too, so you'll know what's best. But that's kind of those options. And then we go into a little more fun topics. I think this is the part where your dad was done. Yeah, that's what I remember. A perianal abscess drainage. Sometimes they have to place a thin tube for it to drain. And I'm not going to go into, but an abscess is like an infection. So there's complications with infections. So the drain is there to help the infection drain and help you get better. So that's something they'll do.
It's very fun.
So the other one is a surgery performed for fistulas, which is a seton placement. Because it looks like seton, Seton, but I think it's pronounced seton. So seton, it's weird now because we kept practicing.
Yeah.
Why?
Seton.
So one of these, so let's discuss what a fistula is because you're like, well, okay, well, what is that? These are all fancy words.
Yes.
A fistula is an abnormal connection or tunneling between the intestines and a nearby organ or skin. Thank you again, Crohn's and Colitis Foundation.
Yes.
So it'll kind of do this and then it'll drain is what it'll do. They have to get to the root cause of this because it's important to treat the underlying cause of this. And some people have fistulizing Crohn's, and so biologics do help with this. And it's why it's important to still have a biologic that works. Surgery isn't going to be a cure. It'll help with that fistula, but you want to identify what biological work for you. So the seton is a thin rubber surgical thread that is placed through the fistula tract and exits out through the anus. So I know. Well, we got to be correct.
If you want to learn more, you can always go to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation.
100%. In fact, I think you should because these
If you
pictures,
want to learn about it,
hearing it might, I don't know if it sounds like, oh gosh, what is she talking about?
I can
But
get canceled.
if you look at it, no, if you look at it online, I think it'll help. So I mean, we could do that. We were on YouTube and we could show diagrams, but it's not going to help you guys listening in the podcast world. So we try to use our words to describe because I know you guys listening, it's not helpful if like we're showing a picture. Here's what it is.
Okay, so we're not going to say what it is. We're just going to show a picture of it.
Right.
And
you listen, you're like, so we're doing our best to describe it, but in a non-graphic way. So I hope it's, making some sense. And maybe you're like, good, keep it short. I don't even care. Keep moving.
I don't want to listen about this.
Yeah. So we'll keep going.
What do you want to bet this is going to be our least viewed episode?
I don't know. I would hope people want to be informed. Yeah. And I think there's some people out there who are like, oh no, let's listen to that when we get to that point. Maybe you're not listening to it right now because you're like, I don't need it, but maybe you're at that point.
When you have to
get
something like
but these are all things that help. Like the surgeon said, to improve your quality of life. We're here to help you. This isn't to cause more pain. This is to help alleviate. So that's the main goal.
But it's necessary.
And then the next one we're going to talk about is a colectomy. And that's where you remove the colon. And so your doctor may recommend this surgery if your colon is diseased and it must be entirely removed. But your rectum is unaffected by Crohn's disease. So if the rectum is okay, but the colon is not, they're going to do a colectomy, is my understanding. Thank you again, Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. Once your colon is removed, so what they're going to do, the surgeon will join the ileum, which is the lower part of your small intestine. You're going to join that to the rectum. So bypassing basically the colon, because usually you have the ileum, the colon, and the rectum. So you get rid of the colon and then you just join. So a colectomy allows you to continue to pass stool through your anus without the need for an external pouch. So the one that would require a bag is the proctocolectomy. And that's where you remove the colon and the rectum. So,
Wow.
yeah, and that's the one that they said is considered curative for ulcerative colitis. So that is, and hopefully we'd like to bring on Rolf Benershka to talk about this because he has an ostomy group that he has started. It's a nonprofit. It's an incredible effort he's making to help people who are going through this life change and show them how you can thrive, help them get through the initial process of getting ostomy. So, anyways, I want to have him on in the future. I want
Yes,
him to,
definitely.
yeah, be able to
Without
talk
Rolf,
about
without
this.
Rolf, we might not even have this podcast, which
I
is
know,
something
no, he
cool.
was a huge reason why we started speaking out and
Mhm.
well, why you did and then why I
Yeah,
did. So, so yeah, so he would be we're very thankful for him and
great
all he
person.
does for this community. So a proctocolectomy, there are variations of this procedure, but patients with Crohn's disease are generally recommended for a proctocolectomy with end ileostomy. So in an end ileostomy, that is where they take the end of your small intestine and it's inverted through a small hole made in the abdominal wall, and that's called a stoma. Yeah, so you end up with a stoma. So that's what that's referred to, and that diverts waste into an ostomy bag. So you bypass the rectum and the colon, and now you use a external bag.
Yes.
So that's what that's all about. Sometimes there is something called a diverting ileostomy, which he mentioned, and he said those are temporary in most cases. So some people will have an ileostomy, but it's not permanent. It's just temporary, and for whatever your issue might be, and then you have it reversed. So there is that. And then the one I think that we're so the one we just talked about, the proctocolectomy with end ileostomy, was more Crohn's related. And now we're talking about the one that's more curative for ulcerative
Ulcerative
colitis.
colitis. This won't really be used for Crohn's.
Right. So this is the ileoanal anastomosis pouch. So also referred to as a
J
J
pouch.
pouch, which I'm sure a lot of you in this world have heard about in the IBD world. You're like, oh, I've heard of a
If you've
J
heard of it,
pouch.
you might know what
Yeah.
it is.
This can be different for pediatrics versus adults, how they do this surgery. So it is important to note that, what we're talking about, what I go on to discuss will be from the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. It could be different if you're pediatric or adult. So just important to note they may do things a little differently or different orders. And so basically it creates an internal J pouch using the end of the small intestine and eliminates the need to permanently wear an ostomy bag. So they try to create, I guess, like a simulated colon in a way.
It's all simulation.
Yeah. So they just use the end of that small intestine um, for that area where they've removed the colon and the rectum, and then you would just use the restroom like anybody else. However, he did say because of this, because again, when you lose, we were just saying, when you lose different parts, there's a purpose to
Yes,
it,
there's a purpose for it. It's not like
right?
you have this intestine,
Right.
small
It's not like your
intestine.
it's not like the intestine just ends and out everything comes. So no, it goes through a colon and through a rectum. So when you remove those and you try to recreate it, it's not going to be exactly the same. Like that's what the surgeon said. He said they do their best, but obviously slightly different function. So you still might have stools around, he said, 3 to 6 times a day or day and night, and sometimes 6 to 10. So unfortunately, you may still be using the bathroom a lot with that. So if you choose to have that, some people may not have those results, but he always has to give people their options and let them know. So sometimes that can be the case. Some of you listening out there may have a J pouch and may be like, nope, not at all. I only in there once a day or twice a day. And so who knows? But that's just what he
Maybe it's
mentioned.
necessary for you, maybe it's not.
Right. It's good for you to talk to your doctor and your surgeon to find out what it might look like for you. And sometimes you don't know till you have it. I guess that's the other thing. So, but this procedure is generally not recommended for patients with Crohn's disease because the disease frequently recurs in the internal pouch. Because, like you were saying,
It
right?
just goes somewhere else.
It's right. Just because they made a pouch out of your small intestines, like not like they told, hey, you behave, don't get any inflammation here. It's like it can
Crohn's
still
doesn't get
become
all the same.
inflamed. No. So it can come back and then they may end up removing that and giving you the bag anyways. But someone with ulcerative colitis may have opted for a bag because might be something that's just like, hey, that's easier for me. So
Yeah.
again, cool to talk to Rolf and ask him these questions. So because we're just here to present facts to you today, and we
Just
did our
facts.
best, yeah, to tell you what the surgeon covered,
Try not to horrify you.
right, and give
But
you
you
the
might have done.
details, and maybe help you guys kind of like understand it a little better. And he wrapped it up after that, and he just reminded everybody that surgery is part of a treatment. It's not always like the end, like,
No.
well, we've done everything we can, now it's surgery. And this is, it's like, no, it's just part of your treatment and it's to
It's
help
there
you
to
get
help.
better,
Yeah.
give you that quality of life. And again, not a failure.
Nope.
So it's just like, hey, this is the best option for you at this point.
Mhm.
And at least there's that option. That
Yeah.
is cool. There are options like that.
At
And
least you have that option over no options.
right, right. Like, I mean, at least they know how to treat this, and they've made, imagine having this 40 years ago.
Yeah, when they didn't even have like
They
biologics or
right, and even
all
the
the ways
surgeries,
techniques they have now.
everything would have been
Yeah.
different. And surgeries have improved. The techniques, how they're able to go in there, have improved. So we're in such a much more fortunate day and age
Yes.
when you're talking about this surgery versus 40 years ago.
Something to be grateful
So
for.
yeah, and some of you out there listening have had this disease for well over 40 years, and
If
you
you have,
can.
that's crazy.
Well, yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's
it's
tough.
definitely a struggle.
Mhm. It is. So that kind of ends like, wow, like an abrupt end. Like we talk about all this stuff, now we're like, we're done. But that's where he ended. And
You
well,
can listen now.
he was supposed to have the video,
Yeah.
like we mentioned that, but unfortunately, it didn't work.
Fortunately.
Yeah. So
Fortunately for my
there's
father.
people like, yeah, like Jason, like he was like, oh good, thank goodness, who knows what's gonna be in that video. And so
When they was like, so today we're gonna watch a video. I had a hat on.
yeah.
And I was like,
Pulled his hat right over his eyes. It's like,
yeah,
"It's
I was
alright, you don't
like,
have to watch. You
yeah,
don't have to watch this."
you're not forced to watch it. You're not held against your
Nobody in the
will.
end, nobody watched it
Yeah,
because it didn't
it didn't happen.
work. So,
The year before it did. So
yeah, but it did not this time. So anyways, that's what he went over, and I'm really glad he did because I think for me, sometimes there's some confusion or there's things I hear, and so it's nice to have that a surgeon took his time to sit down and explain all of this, and he was very positive about everything, and so we
he's
have a
very kind.
yeah, he really is, and they consider all kinds of aspects, and he took time, whole question answer session afterwards, he sat down and answered everybody's
Yeah,
questions too. So, really helpful, and we're very fortunate Radies to
very
have him.
researching.
Yeah, and that's gonna wrap up our show today on surgery. So, if you want to see more of Mason's journey and see just more of what we do as a family, you can go on Instagram at Team IB Determined and give us a follow or just check it out.
Yeah.
So, also the Reggie Project, and you can go on there if you guys want to participate and you want to download your own Reggie and take a picture. And it's linked in our, I believe, and if it's not, I'll make sure it is linked in our description. And so you'll see that, and you guys can download your own Reggie and take a picture, and we'll put it on our social media page.
Yeah.
So we'd love to have you do that.
You can be in it, which we'd prefer, but you don't
Yeah.
have to be in it. Either
Exactly.
way
It's
is
your
fine.
choice.
Yeah.
Right. We're not forcing you, but
No.
it would be cool to see some faces if anybody wants to share. And if you guys are listening to us, you're probably listening on a station like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, or Apple Podcasts. I do include a link to Buzzsprout, which will give you all the different places you can listen to us if you prefer that.
And there's actually a new podcast called YouTube Podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's still newer, and some people are making the switch. We made the jump right away. As soon as we got the notice we could do it, we shifted our whole feed onto that as well. So
YouTube podcast
so
is
if,
now a
yeah.
thing.
So if you go to YouTube, you're going to see two options, which is the podcast, which is just to listen, no video.
Just segue into YouTube videos themselves.
Yep, we'll record all of them.
Yeah. So if you want to watch them, and if you want to hear them, you want to hear and watch, you can go to YouTube and watch the normal video. And if you are on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to be notified every time we post a video, make sure to hit that bell icon.
Yeah.
And if you just want to comment and say hello, or what you liked about today's episode, or what brought you to the podcast, what you're related with.
If you've had one of these surgeries,
we help you learn about anything.
Yeah.
Maybe. If you just want to say hi, just leave anything in the comments. We read all our comments.
Yep. And messages. Some people aren't comfortable leaving a comment, and I'll get messages even through Instagram. People choose to do that, which is fine too.
Yeah.
Like anything, we love to hear feedback or how we can better help you guys in our future episodes. We're always planning on what should we talk about, what's interesting. So if you have anything you'd like to hear, let us know.
Yeah.
So that's it for today, guys. Thank you for listening to our special about surgery. And next week we'll be back to wrap up the whole series on IBD Day at Rady's. And
last one.
Yep. So we hope you guys will listen, and we'll be seeing you guys next week on the next
IBD episode. Yeah.
Well, IBD episode. That's
IBD
better.
determined episode.
IBD Rady's Day episode.
Yes.
Yeah. So
whatever it's called.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you next week on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to apply something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.